Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast. This is the second out of two episodes that I revisit two interviews that I did in the previous years of the podcast. These are two of the most important podcast conversations I had, and I decided to revisit them because I believe they have deep, useful and pertinent messages inside. I realize that, especially if you have discovered the podcast recently, it's probably difficult to go back and check over 300 episodes. So these two specific conversations I chose, I'm certain that you will benefit from. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to discover them and the value that they contain. So in the previous episode, I revisited my conversation with Mark Gober, who shared his mind-blowing conclusions after having interviewed the world's leading consciousness researchers. Today's episode is revisiting my conversation with Victoria Rader, a best-selling author, speaker, and PhD. We talked about her book, Prosper Me, the 35 Universal Laws to Make Money Work for You. If you want to learn the action steps you can implement in order to build prosperity and abundance in your life, don't miss this conversation. Victoria, welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast. It's such a joy to speak with you today.
Thank you. The joy is very mutual and is very bursting at the seams here. So we'll have to try to rein me back in, Aggie. Rein me back in.
Victoria will start with saying to the listeners that I was, first of all, grateful to come as your guest in your podcast all about the voice a few months ago, and we had I really enjoyed the conversation and the direction you took the conversation, and today it is my turn. And today actually the topic we're going to talk about is I think something that many people resonate or will find useful: abundance, wealth, prosperity, and all this will be discussing your book, your upcoming book, which is going to launch very, very soon now, and probably by the time you're listening to this, it has just launched. The book is called Prosper Me, 35 Universal Laws to Make Money Work for You. Victoria, before we go to the book and this completely fascinating topic, which I read the book and I was telling you earlier that I found it insightful in many ways, and we will get to that. But before we do that, I wanted, just in terms of giving us a bit of context. So in terms of your story, your overview, what part do you think it's relevant to or important as context to this book?
You know, Aggie, I'll give you kind of a global answer and personal answer. If you know of anything economically, or if you know nothing, you're probably feeling the pinch as the U.S. inflation right now at a 41-year high, and that ricochets into the global inflation. And as all of our economist friends are talking about pending doom and gloom and sliding into global recession. And so it's only natural for all of us to ask a question then, have a desire to have a little more money. Like, I don't know of any person that hasn't come into my sphere of influence that has not had a conscious or unconscious desire, if only I had a little more money. But the sobering truth is, money doesn't solve money problems. Not permanently. Right? Not permanently. Only money. Just ask Nicolas Cage and Pamela Anderson, who are in the top 15 bankrupt celebrities. Pamela Anderson living in a trailer park as of May 28th, 2022, right after having lost $35 million. So my desire is to give a formula that no matter how much money you have, you were born to prosper, because not everybody, I believe, is born to be a millionaire or a billionaire. Are we capable? Yes. Is it a part of our destiny? Not likely. However, I do know that everybody is born to prosper. And having lived from an outhouse to a beach house journey, I'm Ukrainian, I was born in the Soviet Union, had a prosperity of love and support, an abundance of a relationship. But every summer I went to live in my grandma's house, who had no indoor plumbing. And so while I had the abundance of fresh fruit, all the business was taken care of in the outhouse, right? And then just kind of forward to the most recent, most emotional moment for me. My book is dedicated to my mom, because I was standing at the deck overlooking the gorgeous Atlantic Ocean and seeing my mom and dad walking on the beach, retired, holding hands, and seeing the full picture of the journey. And that at that moment I said, wait a minute, it was a long journey, but it was a deserving journey. And these are the laws that got me through this journey, despite politics, despite economy, despite anything that was happening externally. So that, I think, is why this book is so timely right now.
It certainly is. And I wanted to ask about, so that we can give a little bit of a preface maybe to the book, about your me philosophy, because it really, for me, it stands as the foundation of the book. So maybe it is useful, before we go into some of the more specific things, can you explain this philosophy, the me philosophy, in which it is, I can't write it now on the podcast, but it is in a strangely written way, with a small letter M and a capital letter E. So explain this for me.
Yeah, Agi, I'll first chat for just a few minutes of what it stands for, and then I will share how it was born, that philosophy. Mm-hmm. But I've come to realize that there are 3 stages of empowerment we go through as human beings. And I don't mean like chronologically. I was this, now I'm this, but daily in different aspects of our life, we can find ourselves in one of those 3 stages. And the first stage I call powerless me, where little m and little e are together. They're little. I'm so powerless. And that's when we feel things are out of our control completely and life happens to us. So whenever you are going through the day and you feel something is happening to you, somebody cut you in traffic, right? You got an email that was offensive. We're talking about everything. You got levied a tax you didn't expect. Life happened to me. The second you notice that pattern, realize you're putting yourself into a powerless me situation, little m, little e. And then there's so much of a personal growth and development talk about right now. And I adore Les Brown. Les is going to interview me for his power talk. And his whole philosophy is be hungry. Be hungry for overcoming. Be hungry for doing greater. Be hungry. And I call it power hunger me. And it's big M, big E, because you're hungry to grow. And life at that point no longer happens to you, it happens for you. So you're collecting the lessons. Something happened and you said, wait a minute, what have I learned? What am I to learn from this? How can I grow through this? And it's a very important step of going from powerless to power hungry me. The only problem is that if we don't stop there, then we keep conquering without the fulfillment inside. And then it becomes never enough. It's what's the next goal? What's the next mountain to climb? And we lose the purpose for climbing. That hunger is never satisfied. And so that is when that little m, big E is born as empowered me. And I've chose every time I say it because this is when you surrender to the source, to God, to divine energy, however you relate to something that has created for you and through you. And that is the word surrendering to love. I see love as life originating, vibrant emotion, energy in motion. And so when you surrender to the life originating, vibrant energy in motion, to love itself as the originating way of interacting with the world, life no longer happens to you. it no longer happens for you. It happens through you. You become the vehicle of creation that you have come to be. And in my words, it's you become that version of unique universal me. I am me. You are the unique expression of the divine universal love. If there was a better place to fill this time-space continuum, it would have been filled with somebody other than you. And yet there you are. And that's where that combination of little m, big E, because, people say we're spiritual being having physical experience. True. We're also physical things having a spiritual experience. I do have this. I can touch it. So we're both. So there's no longer need to discard our matter. But there is a need to surrender to our energy. So little m stands for mortal, for matter, for material, and for manifesting. And big E stands for eternal, energy, essence, and expanding. So each one of us is matter surrendering to energy. I am me. Mortal surrendering to eternal. I am me. Material surrendering to essential. I am me. And manifesting surrendering to that expansive. I am me. That is the full philosophy behind me. And it was born in a very unique way. I was starting to write one of my books and had a very different idea. Was 3/4 through writing that book when my publisher said, book could be a bestseller, but the title really sucks. I'm not saying what the title was because apparently it really sucked, so I'm not going to share it. But she said, you gotta think of a better title. And so I started meditating, and every morning I have what I call the chat with God. I sit down and I say, okay, what's my marching orders for today? Take my stuff. It's too heavy sometimes. What am I to do today? How does life happen through me today? And it was such a beautiful morning because it came through, well, just love me, which is all I'm ever asking you to do. And by the way, it's the name of your book. So the book I thought was called Love Me. And then after months of research and work, I understood that there are eight books in making, each one for a different energy center in who we are. In Eastern philosophy called chakras, I call them possibility centers. And Love Me will be the heart center. But before we can fully love, we got to get out of survival. And the survival is the lowest red root chakra, which is money. Hence, the first book is Prosper Me. There you have the whole story, and it's the first time I've shared it this way anywhere with anyone.
Thank you for sharing it like that. I enjoyed it, and it completely I made sense. I understood it. There were a couple of things that came to my mind. One was when you were describing the 3 levels of empowerment, and that power-hungry me that you said, this sensation of never being enough and not finding fulfillment and going to the next goal and the next goal, trying to find something that is not there. I believe it is something, I have seen it many times in the personal development space, that it's more, better growth, but you used a phrase, you said that you lose the purpose for climbing in the first place. So that is, I can relate. I think many listening to that can relate to that. And there was another thing that came to my mind when you were talking about the empowered me, the 3rd level, where life is happening through us. And I will share quickly now that personally I felt that very clearly when I ran the marathon last year. Because the experience, it felt like it was not me doing it, and it's not very easy to explain it. I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say, but I really felt that it happened through me like that. So that was just I wanted to add that as an observation, because it's a beautiful feeling, of course.
Amazing, Agi. And yesterday I have this group that's called Quantum Freedom, and I was doing group healing, and one of the amazing clients said, I have my daughter's wedding coming up, and I can only stand for 5 minutes. I'm so weak. My body is so weak. Can we do something that I have the strength to be able to make it through my daughter's wedding? And what came through was so powerful. I said, no, accept your strength fully so that you allow for the divine to walk and stand on your behalf, right? Like you felt life running through you because you surrendered to the process. And it was just the same thing. And that is the law of grace. I mean, in a nutshell, allowing life to happen through you is the law of grace.
Mm-hmm. I will ask you about some of the laws in particular of the book. I will say, as my own observation, having read it, that I like, well, first of all, I feel that the spiritual element permeates the book very much, which is a very unique angle, because money is a topic that is in many ways, or in most people's perception, is a very earthly thing, or very practical, so I would say. There's not many people see it as spiritual, but I like how you describe and you have the laws of money as form of energy, and you have these beautiful analogies with the flow, or like similar with a river, and that for me was a very interesting and insightful idea, that money, like everything else really, but you just need to look at it like that, it is a form of energy. And the laws, I really enjoyed how you combined some very, very practical elements talking about money with the spiritual, the energetic, or this other aspect of it. So really enjoyed the unique angle, and I was telling you that before we started recording. I'm just saying it once more because I really think that people who find what we have said so far intriguing, they really need to get the book and read it. And we haven't even started going through some of the laws, but I just wanted to say that as an acknowledgement, really, because I find it. I personally enjoyed it. I can't wait to read it again when it comes out as a paper.
And when it's edited, Aggie, I apologize.
It was all right. It was good enough for me to get it, Victoria. That's one of the the things that when you get an earlier version, it's all right. Shall we go through some of the laws of money then, the universal laws of money? And I have 2 or 3 really, that out of the 36, that there are 2 or 3 that they made a big, I immediately highlighted them. Let's talk about this rather than going through detail with some of the stuff, but there are some that are so major, and I will start with the first one, which is indeed a universal law, because it is very difficult not to come across the concept of gratitude, no matter where you look, especially in terms of abundance, in terms of getting more in our life of what we want. So tell us about this universal law of gratitude related to money.
It's a great question, Aggie, and it is one of my favorite laws. It's the first law in the book, because I think it's the first law in the book. It just is. So we're very aligned there. And I think that what happens for most of us, and I say it with deep love, we all think that we're more grateful than we actually are. It's just the truth, person, company included. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm laying hands in my heart. It's a point of awareness for me always. And why is gratitude important? Because translating into the language of money, what we appreciate appreciates. Meaning, the first appreciate is what we pay attention to with gratitude. The second appreciation is grows in value. Right? We talk about stocks that appreciate or depreciate. We talk about real estate that grows in value, appreciates, or loses value, depreciates. But it is true of every concept in our life. It is true of our relationships. If we appreciate a person, guess what? They will grow in value. If we continually criticize them and depreciate them, they will shrink in value. Not intrinsic, infinite self-worth, but the value of exchange with us. And so for the basics of that law is when we're aware of how we perceive the world around us, we start to understand whether we are bringing abundance and appreciation into our world, or whether we are depreciating it and robbing ourselves of the birthright of prosperity that we've come. And for me, the very important distinction for that law, and I think while so many of us, you remember that conversation we had, you have such phenomenal power of authenticity, which I think is why people learn so much from you and your phenomenal podcast, right? I just love that virtue of yours. And so what happens is that because it's been taught that we have to be grateful for all things, people of authenticity say, yes, screw it. If I'm a woman and I was abused, I'm not grateful for that. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned from that. But you gotta be not okay to be grateful. How can you be grateful for human trafficking? You're not okay being grateful for that. So that's the conflict of authenticity where this law has been taught. You've got to be grateful for everything. And that's where we look at that power hunger, right? It's better than not being grateful for anything. Because when you're powerless, you're not grateful for anything. Life sucks. So when you reclaim power, you say, I have to be grateful for everything. But the upgrade is that power hunger to being empowered is, oh, no. I am grateful through everything. No matter what happens to me, I will find things to forgive and things to be grateful for. And that is the process of the pure law of gratitude. And then all of a sudden, all of us authentic people can say, wait a minute, I now can be grateful because I'm not forcing myself to do the unnatural thing of being grateful for something that is of diminishing low frequency of human nature. And in the book, I write about being in Kiev. I grew up in Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian. At that point, it was Soviet Union. And I was on a 16th floor of a cement building that was barely heated in the winter. It was incredibly cold in winter. So I would study in my kitchen. I would put paper and cotton balls, glued with, water and flour mixed glue. I would paper the windows to not allow the wind to come through. And I would cover the door to the kitchen. I would turn the oven on and the oven would heat that little space. And I would study that way. And then I'd take a barely lukewarm shower. On good days, it was hot. Most of the days it was not, and get under 5 blankets. So I couldn't be grateful for the hardship, but I was grateful through it because I had the ceiling, the roof over my head. So that's a very important shift to be able to appreciate things in your life and to notice those things in your life.
Thank you. There was a phrase that from that chapter which I wrote down. It's exactly what you were saying. It was be grateful in all things rather than grateful for all things, which is what you've been saying, being grateful through the experience. So that was an aha moment when I read it like that. And there was another thing from that chapter that made a big impression on me when I read it. It was because we have, again, in the personal development space, the concept of gratitude or writing gratitude lists or all these things are very, let's say, widespread and common. But you say in your book that the important thing is that you genuinely feel it. Yes. So it's better to feel deep gratitude for one thing rather than writing a list of 10 things that don't really connect with your heart. And I think that because I resonated with that, I think others that are trying to, let's say, create or have this feeling of gratitude by writing down things that I am grateful for and just writing them without feeling the feeling, is, as you say in the book, it's a waste of time. It's better to really focus and close your eyes and put your hand on your heart and feel the one thing that you are grateful for at that time. So that was again a big insight for me when I read it. So I would love a comment from you.
You know, I can tell you and I honestly don't remember whether it made it to the book as action steps or not. So you'll tell me if you remember.
There are action steps, yes.
But I don't remember whether it's one of them. But what I do in my personal life that I know your listeners can implement right now is, I guess it's not a video podcast, so I won't be showing it, but on my phone, I have a reminder. And you know, Tesla said that if we understand the power, and I'm butchering the quote, but if we understand the power of 369, right, that we can create exponentially and universally. So there are these numbers, 369, the numbers of creation, if you're either into energy of numbers or numerology. But for me, the way I use them is that on my phone, I have set a reminder for 9 a.m., for 3 p.m., and again for 9 p.m., which would happen 6 hours apart. And at those times, my reminder pops up and it says, I am loved. I am me. What am I grateful for right now? And even if I don't pause at that very moment because I'm in the middle, the next time I see the reminder, I pause completely, whatever I'm doing, and I look at my life at that moment, and I say right here, right now, what am I grateful for? And I feel it, and I feel it. And that charges the time moving forward. So it's just a beautiful, easy shortcut to just live a life of gratitude versus write a list of gratitude. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you for this. This is very useful, and I will add, I was meaning to mention it earlier, that your book has, after every chapter, after every law, it has actionable things you can do, action steps, which they are very useful, because it's one thing to read about something, but it's another thing, okay, now here's what you can do to implement it. So it's very useful. I also enjoyed very much, you have an affirmation or an activation, as you call it, for each of them, which also I found a tremendous approach in giving to the reader something that they can practically implement and put that law into use. And some of the things that are there are so simple, but if only we could, if only we did them. I will ask about one other of the laws, and actually again that will be the second chapter of the book. Obviously these were very fundamental, if I can use that word, and you call it the law of harvest. So you reap what you sow. I will ask you to tell me your interpretation of this law in the language of money. What I will say just before before that, there was one phrase again that resonated very much with me, and I'm going to read it back to you as I made a note of it, that the harvest you will get depends on your dominant frequency. So be mindful of what you are energetically sowing, because that's what will come back to you. So yes, you reap what you sow. It is a universal law indeed.
Yeah, the law of harvest can be an emotional trigger for some people. And so it's very important, I think, for me to remove that trigger and say that until we become aware, we cannot shift. And the only way we can become aware is through self-love and through self-acceptance. So the journey of awareness for me is the journey of self-love and self-acceptance. So if you just would, before I start talking about the law of harvest, and you reap what you sow, because for a lot of us, we're programmed right away to be overwhelmed by guilt, right? So my invitation would be to say, okay, before I go into the law, that you pause and you say, literally, and I love putting my hand on my heart, it said, I love myself through all my faults. I'm going to learn and thrive through this. right? I forgive myself for any mistakes. I'm going to learn and thrive through this. So accepting yourself fully is very important, because then you become aware of your weaknesses and you don't have to come and punish yourself for them. You can surrender them to divine grace to turn them into strength. So for some reason, that was very important for somebody today, and I wanted to share that. So the law of harvest is that we all reap what we sow. The problem is we are not often aware what we sow. So we reap things and we think things are happening unfairly, because surely enough, we didn't intend to sow this. So think of it this way. If you're a coach, and I'm scanning your audience energetically, you have a lot of coaches that are listening to your podcast, Maggie. So if you're a coach and you're wondering why people don't want to pay you full price for your services while people are bargaining with you, I want you to pause and ask yourself, do you have a program? I love a good deal. Because if you do, if you go and you look for sales, if you always are seeking for the good deal, then you're going to attract people, because your dominant frequency, you're sowing the frequency of, I like to pay less for more, or whatever it is, right? And so you are attracting people to you and to your practice that are on that same frequency. So that's the first thing. So if you I always tell people, have an experience of going somewhere, paying full value, and leaning into the law of gratitude, because you're so grateful. Or go into the organic food store, and before you check out and you look at that most expensive box of strawberries, right? I want you to think of how much love and labor went into the luxury experience of you having the strawberries. Whose hands picked them up for you? In what country? Right? It just lean into that experience. So you appreciate, and that's the law of value and the law of gratitude coming together then for you, because then you're sowing abundance through gratitude, and then you receive abundance through gratitude. And the one side note on that law is, so be aware of what you vibrate when you live, because that's what you sow. When you are being very nice to somebody who has a lot of money, and then you're less nice to somebody who has no status, which one was more genuine vibration, right? Adjust. If you treat the poor as the kings of the earth, and the kings of the earth as the poor, you will be treating everybody as the version of me, and you will be at authentic frequency of abundance, right? And so the final thing that's important is that for us to be aware is that we don't necessarily reap where we sow. The law of harvest is interesting, because if you think of seeds, yes, if you seed the whole field, there will be a lot of the harvest that'll come up in the field. But the birds will carry a lot of those and will spread them in different places. And maybe a hurricane will come and destroy the field, but they'll sprout in different places. So it's very important to not be attached to reap in the same place as you sow. So if you continually, if we're going to go to law and investment, if you're continually investing $10, 10 pounds at a time, and you see some things burn and disappear, but all of a sudden your project brings you an immense amount of money, please connect the dots. Because what you are sowing, you're reaping, just not where you're sowing. So very important distinction. Yeah.
Thank you. And one other thing about the law of harvest that made a big impression on me when I was reading was this giving, this frequency of giving cheerfully, you said, or giving from a place of genuine appreciation, which you mentioned with the strawberries example that you gave to, because it is something not necessarily done consciously. When give, especially with the money, many times it's just very mechanical. We give it without feeling this appreciation, or let alone giving it cheerfully. Many times it's with very reluctance. And what you said about the example with the finding the good deals, or the I think it's an invitation for self-inquiry.
Yeah, give to grow, not to get. That's huge. And it's both for money and for goals, right? Set goals that grow you, not that get results only. And give to grow, not to get. If you're giving, it should be growing you and the person you're giving to.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Victor. And I will move on to one other law, which again I felt personally resonated. So I believe it is, again, there are misconceptions with it, and it's the law of service. So the phrase that caught my attention immediately when I read about it is that you say that genuine service is not necessarily what you do. It is what you feel when you do anything. And there was some example that you were saying of when you're not feeling good by doing service and you feel resentment, you have not connected to really what you must connect in terms of service. And I don't want to give the details myself but please talk to us about this law of service and maybe why it has been, there is some misconception about what service is and why some people really are reluctant to serve in that sense.
There are a couple things that I would like to probably mention on that. And the first one is a conscious approach to service. And then I want to tap a little bit into our subconscious programming, because that's my bread and butter. I love living in the land of the subconscious programming, right? So with the conscious programming, Rabbi Lapin is somebody that said that, and it lingered with me ever since I've first heard him say that is the service is the seeds of money. So you want to make more, manage better, you serve more. And so that's a very important thing to be aware of. Now, in terms of what service truly is, service is not doing things you don't want while resenting people you're doing them for. That is serving a lifetime. That's a sentence. That's a life sentence. And this is that subconscious distinction. When we have people that are sentenced to go to prison, they are serving a term. They're serving a term. And so common consciousness, which we're all a part of, is the energy that we share through thought exchange. And, and you're a part of it. If you've ever thought of somebody and all of a sudden they called you out of a blue, it's because you tapped into that common consciousness. Your frequency of need was immediately matched with their frequency. So we all are part of it, whether we're aware of it or not. And so on that subconscious level, the service has become aligned with something that we are punished through. And that's where the reluctance is coming from. And, we've got to heal that in ourselves. Now, if you go on a deep genetic level, you're now bringing the bondage and even slavery that if we have it in our genetic makeup, and so we resent service because we misunderstand it as the contract of giving up our free will. So when we understand that service is the gift of free will through joy, it becomes the most freeing example, because you're making a choice to serve. And when I say it is not what you do, it is how you do, that approach changes your life to a life of bondage, which leads to debt financially as a subconscious mind, to a life of service, which leads to a life of prosperity. Steve Jobs said something to the extent that do only what you love, kind of pursue to do only what you love. And it works great when you've made a whole bunch of millions and you're hitting the billionaire status. It really works great. But none of us makes it to that land of passion and love without first learning to love who we are and to love where we are and to love what we do. So the service looks like this. Love what you do now so that you can do what you love. And by that I mean when you're fixing meal for your family, if you have one. When your friend calls you and needs something from you, pause. Can you do it through love? Because if you can't, don't force love. Just tell your friend no. It's a sacred no. It will keep your authentic being of who you are, your essence, unmarred, and it will keep the energy exchange between the two of you, right? So learning the power of sacred no gives you framework for the sacred yes in your service. And very often, when you listen to that inkling of no, something will come that your soul really wants to say yes to. You know, there is this new thing of say yes to every opportunity. I think it's insane. It's an insane advice. I mean, what do you mean say yes to every opportunity? The second you say yes to an opportunity, you say no to everything and everyone else. So pause, see what's in your heart, not in your fearful head. What's in your heart? What is your heart telling you? If it tells you to lean into it, learn to love it fully, serve from the place of love, and you will prosper.
Thank you. Do you want to also share some action that one can take, listening to this, to cultivate or heal, as you said, this resistance?
Gorgeous. Let's practice common consciousness connection. It's so cool. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, just ask yourself, which one of my friends needs to hear from you right now? And pause. So whose name came to mind? Now grab your phone and text them and say, just thinking about you. So grateful you're part of my life. It's been an honor to share this life journey with you. And send it. Now, I can't tell you how many people will text you back, do you have cancer? Are you dying? I mean, we underappreciate and underserve those we love so much that when we do, they're like, are you okay? Are you okay?
Yes.
You're telling me I matter. Are you okay? Right. So let's shift that. Let's make that a norm, right? Let's make that a norm. So, yeah.
Thank you, Victoria. That's very, very powerful and very useful. And I will quickly ask about one more law. I'm going to squeeze it in because it has a different angle than the ones we've discussed. But again, I resonated with it very much. And it was the law of celebration. That you say that celebrating the small victories, because it wires us to be ready for the new ones. And there is this thing you say that about celebrating. Actually, I will leave that as a question, an open question to you, because with celebration, I don't know if you see that with your clients. It's not something that comes naturally to everyone.
Yeah, the love celebration is very important because if we don't celebrate, we don't snap out of what's next to I am grateful now. So it's the law that resets us on the energy of creation, of creating abundance. But the most important, so it's very important for you to celebrate. Now it's important for you to celebrate on the scale of your victory, right? So if you have done 3 action steps that are guiding you to your most prosperous outcome somewhere in your life, and they're small steps, the celebration could be, this is just like me. This is new me. I'm doing it. So that could be enough of a celebration. Coming to the mirror and high-fiving yourself and saying, you got this, man, you rock. Huge celebration. Meaning that if you got out of a 3,000 pound or dollar debt, it's not good to go buy $4,000 car to celebrate, right? I mean, we want to celebrate wisely within the limits of celebration. So I always say, celebrate to keep the momentum. Celebration keeps momentum to keep you moving forward, but then always scale the celebration within your wins.
It makes sense. And you have an action in the chapter in the book for people who don't find it very easy to find how to celebrate. You say make a list of 20 potential ways to celebrate and start with the ones that are either free or very low budget, rather than, the very expensive trip that you always want to make. So there are different ways of celebrating. I found that very useful as a practical exercise in your book.
Wonderful.
I believe what you have, what we have discussed about and what you shared gives a very powerful, I think, message and a good overview of what the book is about and how it can help one realize some things about the energy of money and about their own abundance. And I'm certainly going to reread it again, as I said, because it has layers. There is depth in the book. It's not one of those books that you just read and put it aside. So thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
I would like to start concluding this conversation, Victoria, and I want to ask, I always ask my guests some quick fire questions to wrap things up. So,
all right.
My first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Breaking through marble. I will give you a 30-second thing that drives me, everything I do. That's 1400s. There is a sculptor, Donatello, who is commissioned to carve a sculpture, and he's given a huge marble block. He studies it. He says, faulty marble, too many veins. Get rid of it. And then 50 years later, the different sculpture that we know, Michelangelo, out of that marble carves the most famous Western sculpture that still stands in Florence, which is David. Mm-hmm. And so when the contemporaries ask Michelangelo, how could you possibly carve David out of this faulty marble? He answers in a way that inspires everything I do. He says, I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved until I set him free. So that's, to me, personal development. That is the angel in the marble. Get rid of the marble by surrendering the M to E.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give her?
18-year-old, let me think. I am in college. I'm falling in love with my husband. He's much older, so I'm hesitant. So what I would tell her is that you're making the right choice.
Thank you. Victoria, tell me where, give us the details of the book and where can people find you. Of course, I will put everything in the show notes, but please share this with us as well.
Yeah, the book is coming out on June 25th, 2022. It'll be available first on Amazon and then with time at your local retailer stores. And so probably the fastest way to get it will be via Amazon. And the book has supporting app that called Empower-Me. So those activations that you see in the book, you could have them and much, much more in that app. But all the information of everything we do, including our Prosper Me coaches that can keep you lovingly accountable and remove your subconscious programs that block your ability to work with the law. All of that information will be on our main website, which is you2shine.com, you2shine.com.
I want to thank you really from my heart for this conversation, Victoria, and I'm going to go back to what we said in the beginning, that I first joined your podcast as a guest. So it's been a delight to speak with you and experience firsthand your also explanations about things that I was reading in your book and made a big deep impression in me. So thank you very much for this conversation, and I hope that the book does fulfill the mission that you have set for it, to really help people find this abundance, this birthright, as you say, of abundance. And thank you very much once again. I wish you all the best of success with the book launch and, of course, everything else that you do in your life and in your mission. Any last parting words from you?
First of all, thank you so much for having me as a guest, Agi. This is always, the exchanges with you are very nourishing. You create the space, I think, for the truth to be born. So thank you for that. And I was wondering whether I could just leave a beautiful simple energy, activation, and blessing for your audience. And so, may you remember your divine origin. May you remember the essence of light that you are. May you connect to who you are, to your appearance of love, to your substance of love, through the love you're intended to be. May you allow for this love to prosper through you, for your family. May you be guided to opportunities. May you thrive, and may you always be blessed.
I hope you enjoyed listening. If you have, please share this episode with someone who you think would benefit from it. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in,